Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Today is Season 4, Episode 25, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, John Keir.
How's it going, everybody?
So today we're going to be looking at the Steelers roster and their practice squad as well that just got shaped up this past week. They got down to the 53, cutting from 90 to 53 in the one shot. But before we get into that, first, we got some NFL news to cover. And last week we ended the episode saying that we still had to talk about Andrew Luck, and here we are. So the story behind it is, halfway through the Colts' third preseason game against the Bears, news broke that after everything, that Andrew Luck was retiring. It was just out of nowhere, and you see people on the sidelines reacting, and you see right after the game that fans are booing him as he gets off the field. It was all this after it just seemed like another minor injury, but apparently it rattled Luck enough to retire from the NFL because of it. So what were your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, just from the standpoint of the fan reaction, it is disappointing, and I've heard people saying that, it's just, fans that are drunk and being emotional, and I guess I can understand that, but at the same time, that's really not how you want to go out. I mean, it's going to be hard not to think about Andrew Luck, and especially from his point of view, it's going to be hard not to think about that being your last memory on the football field, is getting booed off by your home fans. I mean, I feel really bad for the guy, and, for the people who are coming up with the worst takes of all time, saying that that's the most millennial thing ever, and that he's, quitting on his team. And I understand that he probably could have done this at a better time. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to point the finger at somebody, point the finger at Jim Irsay, point the finger at Ryan Grigson. These guys should be arrested for attempt for manslaughter, basically. I mean, Andrew Luck came in there his rookie year and led what was a 2-14 team to the playoffs his rookie season. And I understand that he hasn't been perfect and he's had his injury problems, but that front office and GM gave him nothing. They gave him one of the worst offensive lines in NFL history, and he got repeatedly punished week in and week out, year in and year out, and did the best that he could with very little for the longest time. And by the time Jim Irsay wised up a little bit and got a better guy in there and a better coach, it was too late. And now you're seeing the effects of what has happened to a man who has dealt with all these injuries over the course of time. And I have very, I'm not going to act like I can compare to Andrew Luck in terms of like the grind that he's put in, but I can tell you that getting injured in the middle of a season, or getting injured in general year after year, it takes a toll on you mentally. And yes, getting paid a lot does make it easier, but when you're dealing with as much as he's dealt with over the years, it's very difficult to still love the game the same way that you once did. I'm not sure that he's 100% done, but I do feel like stepping away like this was probably the best thing for his long-term health. And in the aftermath, it's been over a week now. It's still kind of amazing. This is the first time a quarterback is left in the middle of his prime. I mean, we've seen Calvin Johnson do this, a receiver. We've seen running backs do this. We've seen 49ers, the 49ers linebacker. I forgot his name. But we've seen guys who are, I think his name was Borland or something, but we've seen guys retire when they're either in their prime or before they're going to enter their prime. Just stuff you don't usually see. I mean, if you want to relate to the Steelers, Jason Worlds retired right before he was set to make his big money contract. It's not something you see super often, but it's never happened with a franchise quarterback before. And I think that it's been a lot to process, but again, I understand it, and if you want to point the finger at somebody, you point the finger at the Colts front office because they failed him. Luck gave them everything, and they completely let him down. So they have no one to blame but themselves.
Yeah, I just want to build off of that because some people are going to forgive him because, he didn't take the money back. Now, something that I realized just earlier because, so just to give a little bit of a preview, Jacoby Brissett has now signed a new 2-year deal. It's not an extension. He just got a 2-year, $30 million deal. And that was so the Colts actually reached their 89% of spent salary cap that a team needs to reach. So don't feel good because, they didn't take the money back. They literally needed to spend that money because they were getting so close to not reaching that 89% of their salary cap spent. So if they gave it back, they probably would have been under it now. And that's probably the only reason that they didn't take it back, if I'm being honest with you. And so don't forgive them. Like John said, they took way too long to build the offensive line that they have now. They got Andrew Luck killed and into all those situations. And honestly, I just wish him the best going forward. It was really sad to see since he was so great, but I respect the decision 100%. And no one, including the fans, should be mad at it. And that's coming from someone that drafted Andrew Luck about 2 weeks earlier in the fantasy draft. So, I have no bad feelings for him. I want him to go and enjoy his life and just go on past football and do something with it and not have to feel like he's hurting every day and stuff like that. So I respect his decision at the end of the day. And I was really upset with the fans. Seeing the fans made me feel emotional. I was very upset about that, just trying to watch it and just seeing how he reacted. And he even, in the press conference, he's tearing up and he said it hurt. And it's just I felt that, man. But yeah, so that really wraps.
I got one last thing.
Oh, sure.
I don't know if you know this, but the amount of money that isn't used in the salary cap, so that 89%, that's just money that goes back into Jim Irsay's pocket. So just, continuing to say don't feel bad for that dude or don't, prop him up too much for what he did. It was a classy move, but at the same time, he has plenty of money to play with, and he's still getting money funneled back into his pocket anyways. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, man. Just feel bad for Andrew Luck, not the owners here. But moving right along, today the news finally broke that Ezekiel Elliott got a 6-year extension. It was a 6-year, $90 million extension with $50 million guaranteed. That's a $15 million annual average value. And then this, as the whole contract remaining, is $103 million total over 8 years, which is an average annual value of $12.875 million. So the Cowboys did end up getting the deal done with Zeke. What do you have to say about that?
Well, if you're Ezekiel Elliott, first of all, if you're Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott should turn to Bell and say that's how it's done. Now, granted, the situations were quite different, and they're different players at different stages of their careers, but I got to hand it to Elliott. He was a really important part of this team. And I think that he comes out looking really good after this type of deal. Now, we don't know the exact specific type loaded deal. I would assume this is a front-loaded deal. I guess what I'm wondering at this point is at what point can the Cowboys comfortably cut him? So we know that the Steelers don't give out guaranteed money beyond the first year with anybody besides quarterbacks. But with Bell's deal, I think it was the first 2 or maybe even the first 3 of a 5-year deal. The first 3 years, you could keep Bell, and then after that, he's easily cuttable. So I guess what I'm wondering here is over time, what will the breakdown be? At what point will the Cowboys be able to end this contract without suffering too much? And that's really going to be the key here because I don't see how Zeke plays through the full extension, knowing the history of running backs and knowing the way the position is and how he plays the position. And his problems with discipline in the past, he could end up in a lot of trouble if he has another run-in. So, look, if I'm Zeke, I love it. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm nervous about it right now. I mean, I'm happy that you're happy that you got him locked up because he is a very good player. But at the same time, it goes back to that, how much do you really value a running back? How replaceable is he? In the Cowboys' offense, he's not easily replaceable. So that's one way of looking at it. But again, how is this contract going to look 2 years from now or 3 years from now? When can the Cowboys terminate this contract without losing too much in terms of dead money? That's kind of my opinion on it. If I'm Zeke, I'm happy. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm hesitant right now. I understand that you had to get it done, but I need to see more details first.
Yeah, you got to hope that if you're the Cowboys, you got to hope that it was a deal that they could get rid of him after 2023. Because in 2023 is when that entire offensive line, literally every single person, because of they just signed another contract. They signed La'el Collins first to a contract extension. So the entire offensive line, the starting guys, all expire in 2023. So that's basically as of right now, in my opinion, where the Cowboys would start to go into a rebuild, where they might have to start fixing everything because you're losing your whole offensive line. So you wouldn't want to keep an older running back at this point in 2023. And like you said, the running back position hasn't been a healthy position. It's usually its shelf life is about 7 years. So this is already he's on a 6-year extension. So I'm a little bit worried, like you said, about what going forward, like at the end of that deal. So hopefully for the Cowboys, they made it so they could get out of it at the end a little bit easier. But yeah, for now, they needed to lock him up some way somehow. I just feel like they should have done like a 4-year 60 million, yeah, 4-year $60 million extension instead. Shorten it a little bit more, but regardless, he was one of their best players, so I think they needed to do it. Moving along, though, the Bengals have released inside linebacker Malik Jefferson. You might remember Jefferson as a name I talked about in our pre-draft process 2 years ago, as he was a guy I was interested in the 3rd round or 4th round. He was the 3rd round pick of the Bengals that year, and you might remember the Steelers traded right in front of the Bengals and got Mason Rudolph instead, and then they took Malik Jefferson right afterward, which at the time was something that pissed me off, but now it seems okay-ish with now the inside linebackers being solved and stuff. But what do you think of the release of Malik Jefferson?
Not super surprising. I mean, you think it's a little surprising considering he was a 3rd-round pick last year, but new coach, whenever you get a new coaching staff in there, it pretty much means besides the 1st-round pick, everyone else can sort of have their job on notice. That's just kind of the way I look at it.
Yep, but I'm going to transition straight into talking about another 3rd-round pick. The Jets have parted ways with their 3rd-round pick, Jache Polite. I think that's how you say it. It wasn't unexpected, but after the Jets fired their GM right after the draft and stuff. Okay, Ja'Kai. I'm sorry, it's Ja'Kai Polite, but they parted with him right after the draft. It was kind of a questionable pick in the first place. The Jets reached for this guy, and then he didn't even make it he wasn't claimed. He made it to the Seattle practice squad. So it just kind of shows you the inefficiency of the Jets right there. How they let a GM draft for them, and then they cut the guy, and the guy wasn't even good enough to make an actual roster as a 3rd-round pick. Like, he cleared waivers and everything. Like, that was terrible. Did you have anything to say about that?
I think he was the only player picked in the top 150 that didn't make it to the practice squad or an active roster, at least by the team that he was drafted by. Polite was a guy I looked at, and he's certainly talented, but questions about his desire, his work ethic, and his demeanor off the field sent him flying down draft boards, and the Jets took a chance on him. And apparently he was getting into disciplinary issues, so he's pretty much down to his last chance, and he's earned the problems he's had. So, I don't have a ton of sympathy for him. I mean, I like him as a player, but he's got to get his mindset correct. Otherwise, he's not going to be long for the NFL.
Yeah, man, we'll have to see what he does on Seattle's practice squad. See if we'll hear his name in the future at some point. But for now, he's going to chill on their practice squad. But anyway, so next up, we have some more Antonio Brown news because it's never ending, and it's always fun to watch. So this morning, Antonio Brown decided the best course of action to he got fined for not showing up to two meetings prior to the practices, and he got fined for it. The Raiders weren't having it, and they gave him, I think, a hefty fine of $54,000 for the two of them. And he puts on his Instagram that even his team is trying to hold him. So essentially something like that. That's not the actual coach, but even his team is hating on him. And so he continues to just be what Antonio Brown is now. Like, it's just kind of sad. Like, I laugh now because it's great. Every news story that comes out just makes me feel a little bit better about what we had to go through in the past off season. But what do you have to say about it?
It's the gift that keeps on giving if he's not on your team. And for everyone that was complaining about Mike Tomlin not doing a great job of managing the locker room, how about John Gruden and all the great stuff he's been able to do, keeping Antonio Brown under wraps in the 6 months he's been with the Oakland Raiders? I mean, just fantastic. If we're comparing these two, one guy was able to keep Antonio Brown under wraps for 7 years, and Gruden's had him in for just a few months, and this has already been a complete crap show. So I don't really want to hear anyone complaining about Mike Tomlin's managing of the locker room when John Gruden can't even do half the job that Mike Tomlin did.
Oh, yeah. That locker room is going to be so trash throughout this entire season. I can't wait to watch. You know what's funny, just to go off on a tangent today, I was just kind of going through some Raiders fan stuff because whenever there's stuff about Antonio Brown on Twitter and stuff, there's always these same exchanges, like underneath the tweet. It's always someone replies with Juju MVP, and then a Raider fan says, "You're salty," or something like that. So I was just looking, and I was just went down the loophole, and these fans, I thought like I was a little delusional as a fan, but they think the Raiders are going 10-6 this year. And I like just laughed, man. I couldn't do anything but laugh. I was like, how can you look at that team and think they're gonna go 10-6? But I mean, I guess to each their own. And probably in like 3 months, I'll be when the Raiders are 6-0 because I jinxed it. I'll be looking back like, why did I even say anything? But I just laughed, man. But yeah, dude. But anyway, staying in the division, the Raiders division, the Broncos now have an official sponsor for their stadium, and it will now be called Empower Field at Mile High. Not really much to say about that. Do you have anything to say?
No, not really. I wasn't even aware that it had been named, to be honest with you.
Yep. So moving on from there, the Chargers have finally opened up their borders to trading Melvin Gordon. They gave Melvin Gordon's agent permission to seek out a trade, and then it came out that what they're looking for, the base that they want, is they asked for either a 2020 first-round pick or a 2020 fifth-round pick and a 2021 first-round for Melvin Gordon. But so far, the only offer to come out is nowhere close to that, and it came from the Eagles, where the Chargers would get Jordan Howard and the Eagles would get Melvin Gordon, and the teams would swap late-round picks, and the Chargers would eat Gordon's salary there. So with all of that considered, the Chargers declined because that's nowhere close to what they wanted, and that would be terrible for the Chargers to do. I'm sure that they could get a better deal than that, if I'm being honest with you. Do you have anything to say?
Well, like you said, it's quite simply a fact of the matter that it's all about right now Melvin Gordon finding out what his true value is, and right now he's learning that it's not very high. He probably should have just taken the deal that was in front of him, and I think it was a mistake. I mean, he can't sit out the whole year, and I suppose that is an option, but we've seen before with Lev Bell that it really didn't pay. He got a deal that he wanted, but it wasn't nearly as much as he was originally hoping for. So, if I'm Gordon, I would have taken that deal, and I know it wasn't great, but I don't see how you're going to get what you want. Even if you do get traded, you're going to end up taking less on the contract because whenever a team trades for you, you usually don't get nearly or at least as much on the contract as you normally would have gotten if you were just a free agent because the team already gave up something to get you. So I understand that he's playing hardball here and why he's doing it, but I don't think it's going to work out well for him.
Yeah, something interesting I learned about Melvin Gordon, though, is that his contract doesn't toll if he doesn't show up at all this year. So at least that's what I saw. I read that even if he doesn't show up at all, his contract doesn't toll, and he's a free agent, so he has basically the same path as Le'Veon Bell does if he so chooses. So unless the Chargers decided to franchise tag him, which they could do, but that's a dangerous game, and they'd basically end up in the same Le'Veon Bell situation after Melvin Gordon watched it. So probably not the smartest, but if Melvin Gordon does so choose, he doesn't have to show up at all this year, and his contract doesn't toll. So that's just an interesting bit to keep in mind here. But that really wraps up the NFL news for now. So let's get into the 53-man roster, and we'll start with offense. The Steelers decided to keep 24 offensive players in total, and starting with quarterbacks, there's 3 of them, which isn't unexpected. The 3 are basically the ones you expected. It's Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph, and Josh Dobbs. Really, the storyline here is that Mason Rudolph was named the backup quarterback for certain. It was confirmed, and he is now the backup quarterback going into that season. So what do you think of this position group?
Well, anybody that watched the preseason knows that Rudolph was far more consistent and improved a lot from year 1 to year 2, and Josh Dobbs looked just about the same, if not worse, than he did this preseason compared to last preseason. So pretty easy swap there from from second string to third string there. I'm happy with this group. Nothing really much to say. Devlin Hodges didn't make it on the practice squad, so he's just straight up cut. And it looks like possibly going to the XFL, which makes things interesting on that front.
Yeah, man. I'm hoping like the XFL works out like the AAF, where a guy like Devlin Hodges could get a second chance and be like a Garrett Gilbert of the world and come back and back up a NFL starting quarterback with a chance to come in and maybe play on if an injury happens. But regardless, back to the position group here. This basically went down exactly how we thought. Devlin Hodges didn't perform enough in the last game to kick Josh Dobbs off the roster. Even though the Steelers are still thinking about trading Dobbs, it doesn't seem likely at this time. And Mason Rudolph basically had won the job. He outplayed Dobbs most of the preseason. It's just I like this group of guys, and there's not really much to say. But going from there, the Steelers decided to keep 3 halfbacks and 1 fullback. The halfbacks being Connor Samuels and Benny Snell Jr., and the fullback obviously being Roosevelt Nix because there's no one to challenge him. What do you think of that position group?
Well, this one's pretty straightforward as well. Trey Edmonds got the boot. He was the one guy that made it onto the practice squad from the roster cutdowns, and I think that we had talked about this before, but if Snell had not been drafted, I think Edmonds would have been the perfect number 3. But that being said, Benny Snell showed some nice plays on special teams, and hopefully he'll get to continue to improve there. He's probably not going to add a ton right now on the offense, even with an injury. He was pretty good as a short yardage back, though, so I wonder if we might see him get a couple carries on a 3rd and 1 like we saw Terrell Watson do a couple years ago. Besides that, we already know James Conner is your workhorse, so he'll get the majority of the touches, and Jalen Samuels should get some more this year, maybe more split out wide, and a few change of pace carries. And then Roosevelt Nix is Roosevelt Nix. He's the man. I'd like to see him continue to play. He didn't play as much last year as he had in previous years because the Steelers went shotgun so much, but Nix is a favorite of mine. I love fullbacks, and he's an awesome one.
Yeah, he might not have played that much last year, but he still led the league in a new stat called fullback assists, and he leading all fullbacks in assisted touchdowns for running backs. So he still played enough. He's still one of the best fullbacks out there. And for everyone else, I mean, James Conner, that's routine. There was no question there. He's going to be the same guy that we've seen, and hopefully better. We're going to finally get to see him play against New England, I believe, for the first time as a starter because he was hurt last time, and Jalen Samuels had to start. And I'll get more into it in our next episode when we talk about the preview, but I expect to see actually a lot of Jalen Samuels game 1 to see if the Patriots were able to fix what happened last year, where Jalen Samuels was able to go nuts on them I'm forgetting the name of the play. It's like, was it a toss or a counter? Or was it neither?
It's both actually. The toss counter.
Oh, okay. That's what I had both names in my head. I was like, So Jalen Samuels, when he got 157 scrimmage yards last year, a lot of it came on the toss counter. So I expect the Steelers to at least try and see what would happen if they just tried again, see if the Patriots fix their problems or they would still struggle there, because Jalen Samuels did really well and was a big reason the Steelers won against the Patriots last year. And then Benny Snell, I already said it enough. Benny Snell, I didn't think was really deserving of a roster spot over Terrell Edmonds, but you had to do it because he was a high draft pick, and he could be used for those goal line situations. But it'll be interesting to see. There's a chance that he could be a game day inactive. It would be a very low chance because the Steelers running with 2 running backs and the fullback is just not something that they probably are going to plan to do. But it is a possibility if they deem him not. If they deem that he's not good enough on special teams. But moving along, we get into the kind of first interesting position group. Everyone was arguing whether it be Johnny Holton on the roster, whether it be Eli Rogers or Ryan Switzer or Deontay Spencer. And it seemed like we were all fixated on 6, me included, 6 wide receivers. But the Steelers choose to go with 5 only, with Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Dante Moncrief, Deontay Johnson, and then finally Ryan Switzer, deciding to axe both Eli Rogers and Johnny Holton, and then Deontay Spencer as well. So what do you think about this position group?
Well, we were talking about this before, but really we were talking about Fred Johnson versus Tuzar Skipper, but really it ended up being Eli Rogers versus Tuzar Skipper. The Steelers saw two guys in Fred Johnson and Tuzar Skipper they didn't want to expose to waivers, and ultimately they had to cut down somewhere else. So they thought that with the position flexibility of a guy like Jalen Samuels and James Conner, who you can split out wide a little more often than you typically might be able to in running backs, the Steelers felt comfortable. Plus, they had guys like a Ryan Switzer or Deontay Johnson who have a similar build and mold to an Eli Rogers that they felt like they could part with him. And it's unfortunate just because Rogers is one of those guys I've always been a fan of. He had a big year a couple of years ago, 48 catches in 2016, but he was never quite able to get back to that. He struggled in 2017. And then last year he came back from an injury. Looked good in the brief time he had when he returned, and I thought that he was going to be in the plans of the offense, but ultimately just not enough room for him. And I hope he'll find room somewhere else. I'm not entirely certain that this five-man receiver group is going to stick either, Austin. I wouldn't be surprised if the sixth one gets added at some point, just because of the fact that the Steelers ran five receiver sets more than any other team in football last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They could definitely call up one from the practice squad or maybe add one later. But for now, this group seems like what they're rolling with, at least into the Week 1 game. And I'm pretty okay with it. Compared to last year, after last year's cuts, I was a little bit more angry. This year felt like it was okay. Like, I do wish Eli Rogers could have made it, but if it really came down to Eli Rogers or Tuzar Skipper or Eli Rogers and Fred Johnson, I can't really make an argument that Rogers needed to be there. It's a pretty good wide receiver room. You got all the guys you really need there, and the practice squad has like that change of pace guy that you want. So I don't know. I wish Eli Rogers could have made it because I like him and thought he could develop into something, but I think he's going to land with another team. I'm pretty sure Miami probably will bring him back because Miami's team is garbage and they could use improvement everywhere in everything. But for now, I like
Eli Rogers is a good route runner.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a good route runner. It immediately improves them. I mean, it ruins what they're probably going for, even though the Dolphins said that they wouldn't disgrace the game by tanking. They're tanking. They're definitely looking like they're tanking. So maybe that would ruin that. But he could definitely.
I mean, would Eli Rogers really be the difference between 3 and 4 wins, though? I mean, maybe he would be, but I don't know. I think that would be a nice move, and I mean, he'd get a good chance to prove himself, and he's also the only vested veteran to get cut of this entire roster cut down. Everyone else, including the other receivers, Trey Griffey, Brandon Riley, those guys all passed through waivers. And then I know you mentioned him already, but Johnny Holton's the guy that made it to the practice squad. So do you like that Holton made it to the practice squad? We already know that Spencer got claimed, but you can touch on that if you want.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I really did. I thought that Holton would be the one that was claimed and Spencer would be a free agent looking around for a job. But I wasn't worried. I still thought that the Steelers should have cut Holton just because I preferred Eli Rogers, or at least I thought that was what's going to happen. But I do enjoy him being on the practice squad because he's like the Justin Hunter or the Sammy Coates of previous years. He's just going to run really fast and straight, and sometimes he'll catch it. He might not have the best hands, but he's really fast and he can get downfield. And we saw that in the preseason quite a little bit. And I wouldn't really feel if there was an injury, let's say Deontay Johnson just got injured, which we probably won't even see him. He'll probably be a game day inactive. I mean, it's hard to say with only 5 wide receivers, but regardless, let's say he gets hurt. I'd feel comfortable with Holton coming up. He showed enough in preseason where I'd be comfortable with that. Not a lot of playing time. I wouldn't feel comfortable if Juju Smith-Schuster went down and then he had to come up. But still, I like him on the practice squad. And Spencer, the Steelers did try to keep him on the practice squad, but there's nothing you can do in that situation.
Oh, so the one difference with Johnny Holton is that he's actually a capable special teams player and he can actually return kicks. So that's the one thing that he's sort of like Darius Hayward-Bay in that regard.
Yeah, that is true. He does offer that as well. I should have said that. He's not like Justin Hunter or Sammy Coates. He's more like Darius Hayward-Bay, where Hayward-Bay could run really fast in one direction and do all that. But regardless, moving on, we go to tight end, which could be, I guess, sort of controversial. The Steelers kept 3 tight ends, Vance McDonald, Xavier Grimble, and Zach Gentry. I guess the really only controversial one is really Zach Gentry. So what do you have to say about this position group?
Yeah, I know I kind of hammered it home a lot the last couple of weeks, but I really was not a fan of keeping Zach Gentry on the 53. And although it has happened, I guess I can't really be that frustrated about it because at the end of the day, he is your number 3 tight end. And how much is he really going to play if everyone's healthy? Now, if there's an injury, obviously that'll change. But if he's ultimately your number 3, he's playing less than 150 snaps on offense this year. I mean, I can't really be that upset about that. What I am more upset about, and I guess it really doesn't matter all that much, is that Kevin Rader got added to the practice squad, and I guess it's just kind of a trust thing because it's the devil you know. But I was not impressed at all with Kevin Rader. I'm sure he's a fine dude, and I got nothing against him personally, but he looked awful against third and fourth stringers, and I'm not sure what you have to gain by keeping him on the practice squad. As far as I'm concerned, him and Christian Scotland-Williamson have the same chance of playing any snaps at all or even making a roster, making an active 53-man roster together. And obviously, Christian Scotland-Williamson has 0% chance because he's not allowed to. So that's kind of how I view Kevin Rader. No offense to the dude, but I mean, I feel like it's a waste.
Yeah, man. I think I straight up said it on the podcast that he could have been cut after the second week of preseason, like after we reviewed that game. And I was just seeing that. I was just kind of annoyed. It felt like a wasted roster spot that could have went to someone else. Like, it could have went to Devlin Hodges. Not that anyone picked him up, so it didn't really matter at the moment. But I would have preferred, like, Devlin Hodges there or someone else, or even just a random tight end to give another tight end a chance. Like, because I thought we knew what Kevin Rader was. So I thought it would have made sense to bring another guy in that maybe got cut from a team that was practice squad eligible just to see. But as for the active ones, it was routine. I think we all pretty much saw this coming. What we might have not saw coming is that, or at least I didn't, is that Zach Gentry is still on the roster right now. The Steelers, we'll get into it later. The Steelers did try to claim another tight end off waivers and were unsuccessful. And it's just been quiet since then. I mean, they talked about trading Josh Dobbs for a tight end, and then they made that waiver claim, and then it's just gone quiet. So it looks like they're just rolling with this group going forward. But like you said, you can't be...
I was actually going to say, if you want, we can actually just get into it now since we're already kind of on the topic.
Sure, we'll talk about the tight end. So the Steelers put in a waiver claim for Ricky Seals-Jones, the former Arizona Cardinal. And I actually liked Ricky Seals-Jones. I had him on my fantasy team 2 years ago. Or no, last year actually, and he was injured last year. He got injured a little bit late, and so he had no more room on the Cardinals roster. And he would have been, I think he would have been an upgrade over Zach Gentry, but unfortunately the Browns were the ones to put a waiver claim in for him, and they won him successfully. I don't know if I said it. Also, the Browns also won Malik Jefferson as well. I don't think I said that after the Bengals cut him, but regardless, back to the tight ends. So the Browns were able to claim him, and it's just unfortunate. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, I mean, other than he would have been a nice player to add. From what I understand, he's more of actually like a receiving tight end than he is a blocking tight end. But again, I guess it really doesn't matter too much when he's the number 3. And it would have just upgraded the position overall. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't go out and sign someone like a Luke Wilson or a Logan Paulson. I guess it was kind of Ricky Seals-Jones or bust, and it looks like they busted, and for the time being, they're just going to see what they have. I'm not sure if they're going to add anyone else at this point.
Yeah, at least for now. It looks like this is the tight end group we're rolling with. But moving along, last part of the offense, we got offensive line. They decided to keep 9, and we kind of alluded to it. Who the last guy was Fred Johnson. But then with Fred Johnson is the starters, Big Al, Ramon Foster, Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Matt Filer. Then you got B.J. Finney and Chukwuma Okorafor, and Zach Banner as well, who continued to impress for this preseason. So what do you have to say about this position group?
Just it's quite clear. Obviously, you have your 5 starters, and then the first 3 guys off the bench were all just a clear cut above everyone else. And although Fred Johnson struggled a bit at the end of the preseason, he looked solid at the beginning of camp, and I thought that he was a guy that was for sure going to end up in Cincinnati if the Steelers cut him. So he's a nice player to have. He could be a nice Ramon Foster-esque piece that the Steelers hold on to for the next 5 to 10 years. I like that, and I love the investment in the offensive line, something that the Steelers learned was a smart thing to do early on in Ben Roethlisberger's career, and it took time, but they were able to get it done, and it seems like it's still a priority, so I'm happy to see that. And, it sucks that you had to cut from somewhere else, but, this is still one of the best offensive line groups I've seen around the NFL, and I'm looking forward for another great year. And I got to give a shout-out to Zach Banner, who I had Gerald Hawkins making the team over him, and he proved me wrong. He looked really good out there. I wouldn't say he was great, but he certainly did his job and did it well, and at times outperformed Chakuma Okorafor, the third-round pick from last year, who was supposed to challenge for the right tackle spot this year.
Yeah, we're not even sure quite yet. The first depth chart came out, but we don't really know if Chakuma Okorafor won the swing tackle job for sure. It could be Zach Banner playing that, so that's something to watch out for in week 1 to see if who's coming in on as a swing tackle or who's really game day inactive, because the Steelers are probably going to have 2 of their offensive linemen as game day inactives. I would think that it would be Fred Johnson and then one other one, whether it be Chakuma Okorafor or Zach Banner. But regardless, this position group, this has been a big investment in this group from the Steelers, and it's paid off, and they continue to do that, which is a smart thing. Even if it's for the future, I think it's good that they were able to retain Fred Johnson. And I wasn't completely convinced before the roster cut down that the Steelers, that he would be claimed, but definitely during the roster cut down that day when people were getting claimed and people were making trades, I changed my opinion completely. I was like, oh, this guy would have been claimed. And at that point, the Steelers should have traded him if they were going to cut him, but they held on to him, which is, I think, it's a smart thing to do. I think he's a pretty good player, definitely good to develop, and I was glad they were able to find the roster spot for him after seeing all the trades go down on roster cut down day.
They ended up trading someone else, though.
Yeah, they ended up trading. This is basically what sent me over the edge. That was like, oh, Fred Johnson would have been claimed in 2 seconds. So Steelers were able to trade offensive tackle Gerald Hawkins, and he was traded to Tampa Bay for a 2021. He was traded to Tampa Bay with a 2021 7th-round pick for Tampa Bay's 2021 6th-round pick. I believe it's conditional, both those picks, but we don't know the conditions yet. So those haven't been leaked to us, and we're probably really not going to know. But regardless, being able to get anything for Gerald Hawkins at that point in time, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was like the best thing to ever happen. I literally called John when it happened, and I was just like so excited. I knew it wasn't for much. I was just excited that the Steelers were able to get anything from him. But apparently, Bruce Arians, he talked about the offensive line depth after the game, the Steelers' offensive line depth, and said how much he liked it, and apparently he liked it enough to trade for one, which was pretty surprising. He made their roster, obviously. That's why they traded for him. But do you have anything to say about that?
I'm done. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm done saying this guy has no trade value or it's never going to happen, because this is now the second year in a row that I've said something like that. I said that about Martavis Bryant, and now here we go. I said if anyone actually trades for Gerald Hawkins, like, that person should be fired, and yet here it's happening after Hawkins had an up and down preseason, to say the best. I mean, he had a rough preseason coming back from that quad injury, and I feel for the guy. I like my LSU Tigers, and Hawkins has had a rough go of things. He's gonna get one more chance, and with a bad offensive line, hopefully he'll get to see some playing time. But small price to pay for a guy that you were going to cut to be able to upgrade in a late round. I know it seems insignificant, but you were going to cut him anyway. So the fact that you were able to upgrade one of your picks slightly is, that's solid. That's a good move. Savvy.
Yeah, man. If you can get anything, that's good enough. I hate to take that. What's the point? Like, there's always a point. There's always more value in getting just even if you move up 2 picks, which this was round swap, so that didn't happen. But even if you move up 2 picks, it's worth it for a guy you're gonna lose out on anyway. So, but anyway, we'll move on to the defense with the offensive done. We'll start with the defensive line. The Steelers kept 6, and this was basically the most locked-in position possibly on the entire roster, with Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Javon Hargrave, Tyson Alualu, Daniel McCullers, and Isaiah Buggs. I don't actually have much to say about these guys. They're just this is basically what was expected from basically game 1. After game 1, I mean, Henry Mondeau stepped up. Henry Mondeau. And but other than that, it was just there's no one really to challenge anyone else there. Those spots seemed like they were always going to be those 6. What do you have to say about defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, it's really broken up into 4 tiers of how everyone played. Your top tier is your first 5 players: Hayward, Tuitt, Hargrave, Alualu, and McCullers. Those guys were as locked in could be. Isaiah Buggs is in tier number 2 all by himself. He, wasn't great. It was inconsistent at times, but he looked good. And he's obviously the number 6, but he's making the team. Mondo is in tier 3 by himself because he showed some flashes, but never really pushed Buggs on his own. And then in tier 4 is literally everybody else.
Yeah, man. The Casey Sales, the Craig Gilmores, the Winston Craigs, the Connor Sheehys of the world that you probably didn't even notice on the field because I didn't notice them on the field in the preseason. So, yeah, that was all the tier 4 guys. But moving on to outside linebackers, the Steelers were able to keep 5 here. Those 5 being T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree, Ola Adaney, Anthony Chicklow, and Tazar Skipper. Obviously, Skipper was a big deal, so how about you talk about how the Steelers were able to keep all 5 of these linebackers?
Well, as we already know, we'll get into inside linebackers in a minute, but they kept 10 linebackers, and this is only the second time this happened. I think, Austin, you said that this happened back in 2016, but was it 2016? Do you remember?
It was 2016, yeah.
So, yeah, they kept 10 linebackers, and obviously 5 of them came from the outside, and we already talked about how doing that plus keeping Fred Johnson meant cutting Eli Rogers. So, I mean, you've got your starters in place. Bud Dupree looked good in the preseason. Ola Adaney is recovering from an injury, but he should be able to play in week 1, even possibly. I think we'll see him week 2. Chickalow, your special team stalwart, and Tuzar Skipper is your project player, the guy in the position Ola Adaney was in last year. So might not see a ton of him, but he was just he literally made himself uncuttable. Cutting him sends a message to everyone else on the team and anyone else that ever comes in that doing exactly what you're asked and sometimes more is not enough to make a team, which is just the wrong message to send. So keeping him was absolutely imperative. And Skipper's breakout performance meant that Sutton Smith not only got cut, but he didn't even make the practice squad, which makes the second year in a row, actually, I think, third year in a row, that a Steelers draft pick was straight up cut outright. The other years being Joshua Frazier last year and Colin Holba the year before. I don't remember if there was one that was completely cut the prior years, but certainly 3+ years now.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. I know it's probably an exhausted talking point, but Sutton Smith started as like a favorite to make the roster from his early training camp, and then the injury just really, really set him back. He had a visit. Excuse me. He had a visit with the Bengals just recently. He didn't get signed, but he had a tryout. But I guess I'm just hoping the best for him, trying to see if he could catch on somewhere else. But like you said, Tazar Skipper here is the project player that you never know. Maybe if like there's an injury to Anthony Chickalow, he'll get to be active for game day. But for now, he projects as a guy that's going to be inactive, especially because Ulysses Gilbert is the better special teamer of the two. But we'll have to see going forward. And then really, it just kind of makes sense with Ola Adaney a little banged up and probably not playing week 1, mostly just to keep him healthy. It makes sense to keep that extra outside linebacker there. So you don't. I mean, the Steelers did roll with 3 last year, and it would have been the same 3 if Ola Adaney wasn't ready to go. It was T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree, and Anthony Chickalow. But still, that's a pretty big risk in my opinion. So I like keeping Tazar Skipper there. But like you said, moving to something I want to say really quickly. When predicting the roster, it was right there in front of us that it would be Tazar Skipper versus Eli Rogers, because in 2016 when they kept 10 linebackers. It's like it's one of the few years that they only kept 5 wide receivers as well. So it was right there in front of us. I couldn't read into it enough. I skipped over it, but it made sense. This is why it came down to Tazar Skipper versus Eli Rogers rather than Tazar Skipper versus Fred Johnson. But anyway, moving on to inside linebackers, you got 5 of them as well. Like you said, 10 total linebackers. And you got Devin Bush, Vince Williams, Mark Barron, Tyler Matakevich, and Ulysses Gilbert. And you kind of got interesting. There's a chance that all these guys are active for game day because the back-end guys provide some pretty good special teams talent with Gilbert being nominated as PFF's special teams player of the entire preseason. So, and he blocked a kick as well, and he's just performed really well in special teams and preseason. So it's going to be interesting to see if 5 inside linebackers are going to be active on game day. What do you have to say about these inside linebackers?
I think you covered it pretty well. Obviously, the first trio between Williams, Barron, and Bush, they're going to see the field a lot. Matakevich is your special teams ace, and Gilbert is a guy that is a special teams player and has upside to potentially be a defensive player and might even be groomed to be Matakevich's replacement sometime in the next year or two. So just something to keep an eye out there. And then I also just wanted to mention that linebacker J-Ron Elliott, he might be an outside linebacker. I think I might have forgotten to mention this. He had a great showing. He was added very late in the process, right before the final preseason game, I believe, or at least, yeah, I think he was on the Steelers roster for 8 days. So he played in 2 games. He looked very good in the final game at a strip sack, and he didn't make the practice squad or anything. But I would have to imagine he's on the short list if the Steelers end up needing to sign a linebacker to the practice squad. So I wanted to give him a shout out, and then I also wanted to note that inside linebacker Robert Spillane, who reminds me a lot of Tyler Matakevich, also made the practice squad. He was a very solid player for the Steelers this preseason as well. So he was the only linebacker to make it on the practice squad.
Yeah, very fair, because Robert Spillane definitely performed really well, surprisingly well in this preseason. I think it was good that they were able to hold on to him and keep him on the practice squad. Moving along to cornerbacks, the Steelers, after talks that Lane might go to IR, they end up keeping 6, and as of right now, Lane isn't even on the injury report for the Patriots game. So they kept 6 with Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton, Artie Burns, Cameron Sutton, and like I said, Justin Lane. What do you have to say about this position?
Well, we already knew who the first 3 guys were, and we knew Justin Lane was making this team. So it was a question of Artie Burns and Cameron Sutton versus all other challengers. And we already know Artie Burns is a camp superstar, and he continued to do that this year. And Cam Sutton actually equaled and almost surpassed him in that regard this year. Those 2 guys had great training camp and preseasons, and there were really no other challengers. And any challengers that were there felt like they were getting injured. The Steelers, I think, went through 3 or 4 different cornerbacks on the team throughout the course of just the preseason and training camp, including guys like Herb Waters and Ponder, and I'm forgetting the name on other guys. So the only real challenger they had was Brian Allen, and he didn't really provide much. But they did keep one guy, Trayvon Mathis. He looked pretty solid, too. They kept him on the practice squad. But, for a position in pretty constant flux, these 6 guys were pretty solid.
Yeah, no, they were pretty solid. And like you said, there wasn't much challenge. The other guy you were probably thinking of was Alexander Myers. He got hurt pretty early on. And like you said, there just wasn't challengers here after that. I didn't even think that a cornerback was worth keeping on the practice squad, but the Steelers did deem a cornerback necessary there, so they kept Mathis. But finishing up the defense and the defensive backs, we'll go to safeties, where the Steelers decided to keep 4 with Sean Davis, Terrell Edmonds, Cameron Kelly, and Jordan Dangerfield, with Cameron Kelly being named the backup free safety to Sean Davis. So what do you think of this position group?
Well, I really liked what you said last week when you were talking about how they might keep 5 safeties, and the 5th being Marcus Allen in case Sean Davis can't go in week 1. And, well, it seems like he might not go in week 1, and the Steelers just don't seem to care. They're just going to roll with 3 safeties, apparently, which I don't know how I feel about that. But, we already knew the starters, Davis and Edmonds, and Jordan Dangerfield's your special teams guy. But Cameron Kelly, AAF legend, came out of nowhere and has had put together a really fantastic preseason and is being used in 3 safety packages. This guy is certainly in the Steelers' plans with dime and stuff like that, and he could be starting a free safety this year as well. With the injury of Sean Davis, I'm very happy for him. I'm rooting hard for him, and he's one of my favorites already. And I think not keeping a 5th safety might have been a little questionable considering the health of Davis, but otherwise I'm not super concerned about it. And as we know right now, Marcus Allen did make the practice squad, so I think that was a solid addition there. Give him one last shot there.
Yeah, just to confirm from last podcast, we said that we were both going to probably invest our Cameron Kelly jerseys. Well, we did that yesterday, so we are definitely coming through with that. We are getting our Cameron Kelly AAF jerseys. We've bought them, so we actually are doing that. And like you said it best, like he's one of the favorites on the team right now just because of his story. Me and John both love the AAF. I was even more attached because he's from my team. He's from the Fleet. He was one of my favorite players, and it's exciting, man. I kind of feel bad because he's going to be baptized by fire. It's looking like anyway with Sean. Just to give you a little bit of a peek into the future, Sean Davis did not participate in practice on Wednesday, so he might be the starting free safety. It's either him or there's going to be some crazy stuff going on. Like Mike Hilton's going to be moving to safety. So it's going to be interesting. I kind of hope he doesn't have to get baptized by fire in that game, but like it's going to be exciting. And all I know is if he actually does play in that game, if he does like anything good, everyone's going to be going nuts. But regardless, it is questionable right now to only keep 4 safeties. You said it again. On the active roster with that Davis injury being where it is. And I would have been scared as soon as I saw he didn't participate in practice on Wednesday, but apparently Mike Tomlin said today that he has a lot of faith in Cameron Kelly if he has to go. So that's pretty good praise. So I guess if Mike Tomlin's ready, I'm ready as well. And I'm excited. Cameron Kelly could be out here trying to steal Sean Davis's job week 1. But I doubt that happens after one game. But regardless. Moving on to the specialists, it's pretty quick. We got Chris Boswell, Jordan Berry, and Cameron Canaday. Do you have anything to say about these guys?
Well, the only guy who was really in any sort of danger, if you can call it that, was Jordan Berry, and Ian Berryman just never put it together consistently enough. He had a big leg, and it was nice to see, but at the same time, he was far more inconsistent than I felt like Matt Weil was last year. So, to be honest with you, if the Steelers had cut Berry for Berryman, I don't even know that I'd really be happy about that. So, I think it was the right move to keep Berry, even though we already think that he's pretty much a below-average punter. And elsewhere, Matthew Wright just didn't have the leg strength, and there were really no challengers. There was never a definitive long snapper challenging Cameron Canaday. There were like 5 different guys that did it in practice, but there was never anyone who was strictly doing it alone, you know?
Yeah, Trevor Wood didn't even get to do it in actual game in preseason, so it was just never happening, and you basically said it best. But Matt Wile's a free agent now. If the Steelers decide that he's better now, probably not. But the Vikings had ended up cutting Matt Wile after signing Britton Colquitt after the Browns cut him. So, but yeah, that basically those are the specialist positions. So let's go over the practice squad one more time. We went through most of them. I think we probably we didn't say the offensive linemen, but we'll go through all of them again. So the practice squad guys are Trey Edmonds, Tevin Jones, Johnny Holton, Kevin Rader, Christian Scotland Williamson, who's got a roster exemption because he's an international exemption. Offensive lineman Patrick Morris, offensive lineman Derwin Gray, defensive lineman Henry Mondeau, linebacker Robert Spillane, cornerback Trayvon Mathis, and safety Marcus Allen. So, what do you have to say about this group? If you have anything else to say about these guys?
Just a couple of things. I am surprised that they kept. It's a little unbalanced. I mean, it would be with 11 guys, but it's a little unbalanced in terms of the offense. If you're discounting Scotland Williamson at 6-4 in terms of offensive players, I think Kevin Rader is a mistake. No offense to him. And Holton was signed late, but I don't mind keeping 2 offensive linemen because Gray is more of a tackle and Morris is more of an interior guy. No real issues anywhere else. Tevin Jones is a solid player to have there. So is Trey Edmonds. Just pretty much Kevin Rader is the only one I really have any problems with. And I wouldn't mind seeing maybe him get swapped out for either another tight end or just a defensive player in general to even it up. But I just like it balanced like that. That's just me.
Yeah, either him or Tevin Jones got really lucky there where because the Steelers were trying to keep Deontay Spencer on their practice squad, but the Broncos claimed him. So one of them was in trouble. I would probably say Tevin Jones because it's the same position, but I'm not sure. Keeping 3 wide receivers on the practice squad is really weird. As for the imbalance, I think it's because they kept one more on the defense than they did on the offense on the active roster, so they probably consider that as well. So it's almost balanced when you consider that the defense has one more actual 53-man guy than the offense does. But regardless, I was pretty happy with this. I needed Trey Edmonds there. That was the one I was most hoping for. I liked Derwin Gray. I like Patrick Morris there, and Mark Salem I thought was a need there as well with the injuries to Sean Davis. So I like what the Steelers did with their practice squad here. But
Agreed.
Yeah, man. So we go into Steelers news after that, because that basically wraps up here. So going into Steelers news, the biggest news is that the Steelers have signed Joe Hayden to a new 3-year deal, tying him to the Steelers for 2 more years. The deal is a 3-year, $32 million deal that includes $16.8 million in roster and signing bonuses. So what do you have to say about that deal?
Yeah, so it's basically like they're tearing up the original deal he signed, and this 3-year deal kicks in now. So he's playing this year, next year, and the year following that. Looks like a great deal for both sides. I mean, I understand that the Steelers typically don't sign guys like this for this long, for this much when they're this old. But to be honest with you, even if the deal kind of does blow up and Hayden does drop off, he's been your best corner for the last 2 years. And if you didn't have him, you'd be in serious trouble. And, he's probably someone that you could feasibly cut at the end of this year, and certainly after 2 years. You owe it to yourself to reward this guy for what he's done. And, it still looks, I don't think he will necessarily fall off. I think he still can do some really great things. But even if it goes south, to be honest with you, I think you owed it to yourself to give this a shot because of the state of the rest of the cornerback room.
Yeah, man. Seems like just yesterday I said that Joe Hayden was a small upgrade over Ross Cockrell, and we've come a long way from there. Joe Hayden is definitely more than a small upgrade from Ross Cockrell, and he's done really well. He's bounced back more than I ever would have thought, and I think he was deserving of this. But moving right along, Joe Hayden is going to be the only extension of this offseason, at least going forward. There won't be another one happening. And that means Javon Hargrave will not be signed to an extension this year, meaning unless if he gets the franchise tag at the end of the 2019 season, he will most likely become a free agent. It's going to be rough. I've been saying it. I've had a bad feeling about trying to keep him with the lack of money that the Steelers have. The Steelers needed the Antonio Brown money free, the $22.5 million in dead cap free this year to do it. In my opinion, I think that Javon Hargrave is going to get a hefty payday, and the Steelers are just going to have to deal with a pretty high comp pick in the 2021 draft, because I think Hargrave's going to be paid pretty heavily, possibly even top 3 defensive tackle money. But we'll have to see. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I don't know how the franchise tag is exactly split up right now, but if it's a difference for interior defensive lineman versus nose tackle, the Steelers might get lucky in terms of the franchise tag, but this could be a $12+ million franchise tag. This could be a very expensive thing, and that's a lot to invest in a guy who only plays 50% of the snaps on a good day. So as much as I love Hargrave, he's one of my favorite players. I think he might be the most underutilized defensive lineman in the league. There's just not enough room for him right now, and he needs to go spread his wings if that's the case, which it would be a huge loss, and that would make interior defensive line probably the biggest need on the entire team going forward. So I guess we're going to, unless if the tag gets used, I guess we should start preparing ourselves to, if we're going to watch any college football, let's look at interior defensive linemen.
Yeah, no matter what, the defensive line is going to be a big deal next year, because if the Steelers are keeping Javon Hargrave, it probably means that they had to part ways with Stephon Tuitt to do so, which that's very unlikely with how they use their defensive lineman at the moment. Obviously, Hargrave is kind of the odd man out there because he doesn't get the snaps that he probably deserves. But so no matter what, I'm thinking defensive line is going to be a big deal in this next draft. But regardless, the last bit of Steelers news we have is that the Steelers have named their captains ahead of the opener. Quarterback Ben Roethlisberger is one. Marquise Pouncey is another. Cameron Hayward is for defense. And for special teams, the captain is Rosie Nix. So what do you have to say about those guys?
Well, the first 3 guys have been captains for multiple years now. The new one was the addition of Roosevelt Nix, and there might not be a better special teams player on the team than Nix, and he's been very, very much deserving of that role. And he's a good person and a hard worker too.
Yeah, man, I think you covered it good. So that kind of wraps up this episode. Before we completely finish, we want to do one season prediction quickly before before we get into the preview episode for the Patriots. So, tell me what you think the Steelers' record is going to be, who their biggest win is going to be against, and who their biggest loss is going to be against.
Well, there's a lot of talk this year about how this is the Browns division for the taking, and the Steelers fans and Ravens fans should feel, them and the players should feel pretty disrespected after both those two teams were the best teams in the division last year. There's a lot of hype surrounding the Browns, but I do think the Steelers will win the division and will take the number 4 seed in the AFC with a 10-6 record this year. There are a few games, as there are every year, that could go either way. The opening 3 games, at Gillette Stadium, hosting the Seahawks, and then at San Francisco. Those first 3 games are going to be a huge measuring stick for the Steelers, and then you've got 3 straight home games between Week 8 and Week 10, so that could be a great place to build up some momentum. You've got a game in Arizona, which could be interesting, and then you've got 3 games hosting the Bills, at the New York Jets, and at the Baltimore Ravens to end the season. I think it'll be a somewhat slow start, but I think the Steelers pick up some momentum mid-season and finish out pretty strong, too. I have their biggest win coming in the Week 8 Monday night home game against the Miami Dolphins, what is quite clearly the worst team in the National Football League this season. The Steelers at home in primetime. Monday night, they rarely lose. And ironically enough, the Steelers faced the Dolphins on a Monday night at home. In 2007, Mike Tomlin's first season, the field was memorably in horrible shape, and the Steelers nearly lost to a winless Dolphins team at the time, with the lowest scoring Monday night football game in history at 3-0 as Jeff Reed kicked the game winner in the closing seconds. I don't think it'll be quite like that. I think the Steelers win that one big time going away. And then I have their worst loss coming in Week 3 against San Francisco. Week 3 has not been kind to the Steelers in recent years now. Week 3 last year, they won in Tampa Bay, but the year before that, they lost in Chicago in overtime, and they gave up 200 rushing yards to the Bears. The year before that, they got absolutely thrashed by the Eagles in Philadelphia. Going to the West Coast is a huge problem for the Steelers. It has been for years. And even though the Niners, I think, are going to be kind of a middling or bad team, I just have a bad feeling about that Week 3 game. The Steelers on the West Coast is never good news, especially when it's against a team that might not be that good. It's a recipe for Steelers, a horrible performance across the board that we've come to expect once or twice a year now.
That's fair. That is totally fair. So for me, I have the Steelers going 10-6. I think that at the end of the day, I think that the Steelers are going to have a bounce back season and will be able to make the playoffs. I haven't really decided how I thought about the Browns yet. I kind of agree with a YouTuber called Urinating Tree that kind of said that they're boom or bust. They're either going to be really bad and it's going to be hilarious, or they're just going to actually live up to expectations and be really good. Like 8-8 doesn't seem like a possibility right now, and I haven't decided which side of the fence I'm on at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see if the Steelers win the division with 10-6 there. I don't care. I don't consider the Ravens as a threat as much anymore. I do think the Browns are going to be the bigger threat because I just don't like Lamar Jackson, and I think the defense carried them last year. I think the defense got worse even with the addition of Earl Thomas. They lost way too many pieces, and then Tavon Young's out for the year now with his neck injury. So I just think that the defense is way worse, and it's not going to be able to work what they were doing, where they ran down the clock by running every single play. But moving on to the biggest win, I have the biggest win at Arizona in Week 14. I think the Steelers are a team built very well to take down Arizona, because what Arizona's biggest problem, in my opinion, was offensive line coming out last year. And you know what they did to fix that? Nothing. They did absolutely nothing besides add Marcus Gilbert, which Marcus Gilbert, of course, is pretty good when he's healthy, but that's not enough to fix the rest of the line, where the Steelers have one of the best pass rushers in the league, certainly tied for the most sacks in the league last year, and they're definitely heading for it again. And TJ Watt's only been getting better, and now they have Devin Bush, who could be on inside linebacker blitzes. It's just, I feel like the Steelers are a team very well built to handle Arizona, and it might be rough. There could be Kyler Murray could be sacked 6 times that game. I could see it happening. So I have that as the biggest win. The biggest loss, I couldn't really think of one. until I just picked the biggest loss to be the New York Jets Week 16 because I am going to that game. So since I'm going to that game, I'm sure that they will lose in miserable fashion. To be fair, the first game I went to was in 2013 against the Jets, and the Steelers were 0-4 in that year, and they got their first win in New York Jets. The next time I went was 2015, and they lost. So I'm 1-1 when going to the Jets game versus Steelers. So I haven't been a total crutch when I go to those games, but I'm just gonna say that because I go there, my luck is not gonna be good, and the Steelers are gonna lose there. But yeah, so I guess that really wraps up this podcast. Unless you won't have anything else to say.
I'm good to go, my dude. Time to turn our attention to the New England Patriots. First football game of the season is tomorrow. We got Bears-Packers kicking off the 100th season of the NFL.
Yeah, man, it's going to be exciting. One of the best rivalries in the NFL, and football is back. That's all that matters. I'm excited for fantasy. I'm excited for Steelers football. I'm excited for it all, man. So you guys have been listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you want to check us out on Twitter, SoundCloud, or Blogspot, we write some articles sometimes. You can check us all out in the description, in the links down in the description below. And I guess everybody, have a good night.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.